Hello, ladies. I hope you're ready to have a wonderful day and to listen as you work, because this is what these videos are designed for. There are so many beautiful things to see on the web, but you have to stop and look at them. And I don't even use live stream because I have to peer over and answer and pay attention to it. So you can get something done, especially if it's something you've been putting off or rather tedious or something you're just not ready, you haven't been able to get a start on. You can do that, and I'll try to keep you company, and I won't bother you because I won't even be there. And this is such a wonderful medium. I just love the era that we're living in, because I remember when you had to go to a ladies' seminar, maybe in a church or some civic place, and you had to leave your children and go and maybe learn a little bit about the home, fellowship with other ladies, and kind of overcome the isolation. Well, now you don't have to feel isolated, because you have many people you can hear on the web talking about the home, about homemaking, about how to do it well and enjoy it. And you don't have to stop and watch, and you don't have to feel that you're alone. Homemaking is quite an isolating job. It's just that's designed to be that way. I can't imagine sewing in a group and getting very much done. I have got to focus, to concentrate on it, and it absorbs me completely. And so homemaking is like that too. It's lovely when your children are around, but if you're all of the same mind, it's even better, because they know what is important to you and what they can help with and what they can do by themselves. And that's great. That's the kind of group you want. But to have someone, to have to go to something or have someone come over and talk to you does take time. And this way you don't have to leave your children, you don't have to leave your family, and you don't have to leave your sink full of dishes. You don't have to give up making lunch for anyone, because you can listen as you go. I'm Mrs. Sherman, and I have a blog, and I'd like you to go over there and subscribe, because it will show you some other things that I'm doing besides videos. I would also like to tell you that Roxy at Living from Glory to Glory has done her first video, and it's absolutely beautiful. And she told me that I might be able to put my videos on straight from my computer, and I wouldn't have to, click all that stuff over at YouTube, which I might try and see if that works. And that's such a great tip. And for her first video, it just came across as just being so beautiful, so relaxed, and yes, even professional. And she speaks her heart, and she has a lovely blog, Living from Glory to Glory, and I will stick that in the post so you can go and see her first video and vote and make a comment and vote on whether she should keep going, because she spoke for 10 minutes, and that's all you need, really. And I would like to speak for 10 minutes, but I found out that for the purpose of getting something done, which is what this is, it isn't all inspirational, but it's also to keep company with you. And then I don't have to call 10 people and talk to them and share all my ideas. I can just share it once on a video. So this is for the purpose of working at something that maybe is a little tedious, a little repetitive, which, every day in the home as a homemaker, you're going to do the same thing you did the day before. But it's actually interesting, because you can change the way you do it. You can change the routine you have. You can do something else first and something else last. And then you also have to do what's urgent for the moment. Now, there are a lot of things you're going to do. If you go to work outside the home, no matter what the business is, unless it's your own business, you have no control over what comes first and what you can do. And you also will face doing the same thing over and over. If you work in a factory, it's the same thing over and over. It can be really mind-numbing, but don't let the home be that way. That can be interesting. And the home should be, you should use things like, approach it with cleanliness, orderliness, creativity, beauty, and comfort. When you combine all those things in it, that is just really invigorating. And I'd like to, goodness sake, I left my phone. And I don't know how to pause this, but someone texted me a beautiful message about how if you're stuck and you have trouble getting motivated, you have a tiredness all the time, you're just slugging along, you can't seem to get going, that if someone was coming, that would motivate you to get everything in order quite quickly. But that would wear off. That isn't real sustainable energy. That would wear off after a while. But if you had something you were doing that really inspired you, like sewing a dress in a day for a photo shoot for something that you're doing in your sewing on your sewing blog, or maybe an event that you were going to, and if you were excited about it, it invigorates you. And remember, excuse me for shaking this around. Remember, I was reading out of the book Ethel Cotton's Course in Conversation from the 1960s. She was a British woman, and she had a chapter on conversation when you're tired. And she showed in there how to create interest in conversation that maybe you had a hard day and you're ready to quit, and you are faced with having to converse with people, or maybe in some kind of business that you had to have some kind of conversation going on, how to revive your interest in it. And she suggested you find some interesting things that do interest you enough to perk you up. And so this is the way that we need to approach homemaking. When it gets a little bit tiring and you feel tired, think of something that you're interested in that would invigorate you. I used to, when it was more tedious in the olden days, to do things that just took a lot longer. It was before we had a lot of the conveniences that we have today. I mean, even today you can order your groceries and they can come to the door. Isn't that lovely? And so what I would do is sort of think of myself as someone who was getting ready for a trip. So it was easier to clean the closet. It was easier to act like I was refining everything so that I could get ready to go on a trip. And it was easier, or to imagine that I was going to host someone in my home. And that really invigorated me. And sometimes what I would do, it was actually make an appointment for people to come over for lunch, tea, or dinner. And it would be in advance, several weeks in advance, maybe a month in advance. And that motivated me. It was a point at which I could say, look, I've got to get this done. I've got people coming in 4 weeks. And I never, ever failed when I did that. Now, that might not work for you because everybody's different. Everyone has a different situation in their home. Now, if you're not familiar with this and you're new here, I divide this speech into 3 areas, and one is appearance. That's your preparation, getting ready. And I'm having a very dull day here, I have to tell you. It is so dark. This is the lightest room in the house that has the most windows, and I created a corner where I could broadcast, and it's not the best light, but I have to tell you, as gloomy and terrible as it is out there, it's just awful, just awful. It's practically dark, and it's early in the morning, and sometimes in the winter, we live in a rainy climate, and sometimes in the winter, it's the same kind of light. It's as dark in the morning as it is. It's as dark at 8 o'clock in the morning as it is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But I keep remembering that behind all that darkness and those clouds, the sun is shining behind there, and I try to make it sunny in the house and try to keep my countenance lifted up. And I also remembered what I was telling you about Ethel Cotton's Course in Conversation, of having conversation when you're tired. She thought that tiredness was often multiplied by a tired attitude. So her idea was to perk your spirits up, to perk your attitude up, and get some interesting things in your mind before you engaged in conversation. And it's the same thing with the home. It could be a tired attitude too. So if you think of something you'd like, what would it take? What would it take to make you feel better in the home? The situation. Would it be maybe a brighter atmosphere? I can't thrive in a negative, gloomy atmosphere. I just can't thrive. I cannot be creative. I cannot work as well. I could work, but not going the second mile and doing my best in a gloomy atmosphere. And I'm not just talking about the weather or the light, but attitudes. I can't work around negative attitudes or negative people. I can only take so much of that, and it'll drag me down. And so I try to keep the attitude fresh. And so we'll take care of our appearance first. So if you haven't done that yet, if you haven't had your shower and you haven't fixed your hair and you haven't gotten dressed in some nice fresh clothing, remember, you might not think that anyone's paying attention, but if you have little children, They notice what you wear. And remember, they're only so high. They're going to see at that eye level something pretty, especially if you're wearing a pretty skirt with a print on it. That delights children and also reminds them that their mother has lightheartedness and softness and sweetness and happiness, and you're going to teach them how to be that way by the way you are. If you are a critical person who's always complaining or overbearing, the children will pick that up and they'll be like that too. You don't want to, because they're going to be your future social life, and you don't want to have other adults see they'll be at eye level with you someday, and you don't want to be stuck with other adults that are always negative and gloomy. So you have to correct your own conversation. And conversation also in the Bible means conduct. So we start out with our appearance, and I mentioned the other day in my previous video that for beauty tips, a soft and refined look is always best. Not too many breaks in the line of your appearance. And that's why I've always said a dress, a one-piece dress, is just the ideal, perfect garment for a woman, because it's just one piece and not a lot of pieces. And one of my pet peeves is all these straps and layers and things. How can these girls stand it? How can you stand all the inadequate garments that are on the market now require us to wear something to cover up one area and something else to cover up the other area. They'll buy a short t-shirt because it has nice sleeves and a nice neckline, but then they have to wear something long under it or over it, and there's just no end to the amount of stuff that they have to pile on. And I don't like the unsightly look of different colored straps showing. I don't know when that came into I don't know when that came into vogue, but I'm sure glad to see it go. And I think one of the mistakes that we make is picking up things that are cheap, and they're so uncomfortable, and then you have to throw on more stuff to cover them. And so today, ladies, I would like to read. I did have my phone here because it just rang, so I'm going to read, if I can find it, the text that a lady sent me about how she's motivated by something that she's inspired by. And if you could get your home if you could turn homemaking into something inspiring by saying to yourself, I'm going to make it lovely, I'm going to make it better. This is not just some place for everybody to crash. It's not just a shelter. There is something beautiful and regal and blessed about it. And so that your attitude plays a big part in this. So first of all, let's start with your appearance. And if you haven't gotten dressed, if you haven't fixed your hair, if you have not just really had a few moments to take stock of what you look like. And I remember in the olden days, back in the 50s, every now and then the 50s homemaker would just kind of stop what she was doing, and she might be finishing up something, and she would go to the bathroom and just check herself, just check her hair, just check to make. Usually she had a piece of flour here and here and a flower on her clothes, but she'd just go check herself and give her hair a pat. And so I think you do have to do that once in a while, and also check your attitude. I think it's very valuable to look in the mirror to see if you haven't gotten hardened and bitter. I think it's really good to look yourself in the eye. And so also take an attitude of, I'm trying to inspire others. And you're going to go to the grocery store, and you're going to also maybe see someone in your own home. You may go to church, and always have an appearance that is not offensive to other people, that doesn't make them want to turn around and walk away. And there was a stage that young ladies went through back in the, I believe, 1990s, where they were so bizarre in the way that they dressed and the way that they fixed their hair, and just everything was so almost scary and clownish that people avoided them. And it was almost a way that they could isolate themselves into their own group, and no one else would bother them or influence them because nobody would approach them. They just looked so unapproachable. And so we don't want to be like that, but in a way we do set ourselves apart, and that the people that are a little bit daunted by this refinement, by wanting to look a little smooth and refined and soft, will kind of keep their distance. They're not, they don't feel a rapport with you, and so in a way it kind of protects you. So if you would like to look better and you want to think about that, there is, someone asked me about beauty tips, and I can't, I just can't give you any, because everybody has just got to experiment with their own self to see what looks good. But I did, after someone asked me about that on a comment, I did go to YouTube and I found somebody called the Makeover Guy, and he was mainly helping women who were older, not the young women. I do think the young women need to be careful not to get into too many bizarre, trendy things, because they only last so long. You're going to have your pictures, you know, for later. You're going to look back on them. But if you'll keep with a soft, serene style, refined and almost classic, go back and look at the old paintings from the 1800s and see the hairstyles and see the clothing and get an idea of what you would like to look at it later on. Because I mean, I have to tell you, some of the photos that I've looked at from when I was a teenager and had no idea what I was doing, and I was just getting carried along with what was available in, and I would trust hairdressers, and they would give me a style that wasn't right for me, for my personality, or for my, I would say, my interests and my beliefs. And of course, they don't know you. And then I have the pictures of when I was 16, 17 years old. I'm thinking, what was I thinking? So be careful when you're younger, because you may have pictures and your children like to see what you look like. And so you want to have something that will make them proud of you and not go too bizarre. So now I want to, so that man was called the Makeover Man, and he did several makeovers of women who were older. And he really, I believe, brought out their kind of a bloom in their faces and made them look really young. He paid attention to how the hairstyle would frame their face and make their eyes bright, and I really appreciated that. And but now for the younger women, I don't have a link for them. So if you're younger and you've got kids at home and you're watching this, you might have to make sure that you make your daily beauty routine very simple and just keep your hairstyle beautiful and smooth. And let's say now that we go on to the homemaking. So homemaking is a matter of character. And so while I'm talking about refinement, there are many things that you can refine. Now, if you'll just look up refinement, you might find the example of the refinement of gold. It's heated and all the dirt and dross and the ugly parts comes to the top of the melted gold, and then that's discarded and you have the pure gold. So that's what refinement is. It's taking off the rough parts and so that you can see the shiny parts. So homemaking is a matter of refinement, because you can be refined in your character, refined in your manners, refined in your home, refined in your skills, and refined in your conversation. So this just means that you're taking the unnecessary parts and discarding them and keeping the stuff that's pure gold, that's value, pure value, good value. So to refine a homemaker, to be a good homemaker, it takes good character, because you're going to have to overcome your I don't want tos and your fearfulness and your dread of some jobs and just tackle them. You know, they used to say in the old days, you know, the only thing you can do is roll up your sleeves and get to work. But fortunately, we have today, I used to listen to music, you know, we had the old-fashioned stereos, and you put a record on, and sometimes you could stack them, and you could listen to your favorite music while you worked, and before long, you had gotten a great deal done and didn't even know it. You were busy listening to the music while you were working. So that's one of the reasons that I'm doing these videos, so that you can have someone to listen to as you go, and hopefully encourage you to get something done. Now, I would suggest today to make a list, but just make sure you do 2 things on the list. And this is the reason I say that is I do make lists, but I have discovered from looking back at the older lists that I usually only complete 2 main things. And so today, the 2 things that I am going to do, I'm going to get the kitchen cleaned up, and I'm going to finish the laundry. And if I have any time left, then I will go on to the other things that I have listed there. But if I can get 2 of those things done, one of the problems with lists is that we hold ourselves up to such a high standard, and then we're discouraged. So just write 2 things, the 2 most important things that you must do today, and then work a little bit on the 3rd thing on your list if there is time, but don't beat yourself up too much if you can't do it. So good housekeeping requires character, and that's a refining thing. To refine anything is to take away the things that are worthless and to get down to the things that have value. So now, as I said, I don't thrive very well in a home that has no beauty in it. So I do my best to do that. And I have some teacups to show you today. I'm sorry I didn't show that at first because you're going to have to come back and stop so I can show you. Okay, today I'm wearing a shirt that comes from Walmart. It's Time or True. I'm going to talk a little bit about Walmart after a while. Maybe not in this video, and hopefully, but it's an olive green. I've been wanting to see how that would look. This is not my color, but I wanted to try it. And as I get older, I notice my complexion changes a little bit, and I'm able to wear some of these colors that my redheaded mother wore. She loved the amber. She loved olive green, but I was more of a clear color summer person, and enjoyed the Kelly greens and the aqua greens. And so this is something new for me, and it kind of looks like an army green, but it goes with the teacup that I have. And this is and I'm recycling all my teacups through my blog. You would have to go a long ways many years back to see these that I'm doing now, because I'm just redoing them. So I'll just show it to you again. And this is a tall cup from Home Goods, and it's a Roy Kirkham Rito Roses. And I will just tell you something about this, kind of goes with my olive shirt, is that I served tea in it, and ladies didn't like it because it didn't cool very well. It stays real hot in this part. Now, you might like that. Now, Americans don't drink milk in their tea, so we don't cool it down with anything. We like the flavor of the tea itself, and that's why we're so particular, and why so many of them like the Yorkshire Gold. It has this wonderful smooth taste, lacking in the tannic acid, no bitterness, and we love it. But they didn't like it in this cup. It's too tall, and it stayed piping hot, and they just didn't appreciate it. And then towards the bottom, it got very tasteless and dark. Sometimes I wanted to tell you too, you can't put tea in a thermos. Put your hot water in a thermos. Take your tea bag with you and make the tea in a cup. But you don't want to make it in a thermos. It changes the nature of the tea. It turns black. It just doesn't have any taste. I just wouldn't recommend it at all. So the better thing to do would have been this cup. I have shown this before. I was kind of saving this cup because I wanted to find some fabric like this. It's the apple blossom. And I wanted to find some fabric. It's by Duchess. There's no name of the particular pattern, but I just think it's so beautiful. And I apologize for the light. It's not too great. But this is probably from the 1960s. It's in great condition. Doesn't even look like it has even been used. And I love the saucer, and I just love the color. But they like these. They particularly like tea in a bowl shape. This is almost like the mug. But I'll explain that to you later. And so I'm sorry, it's been 25 minutes, and I just now got around to the teacup. And I do have a book to show you today. And so I want to continue on with more ideas here. about the home. And so I mentioned to have two things that you could do, and someone suggested to me that one of the things that she did, I have a couple of friends I always consult before I do these videos so that I can get some ideas, bounce my own ideas off of them and get them some feedback from them. And she suggested that what she does is that her house can be so daunting, and she doesn't know where to start, and she decides she's going to stage the house. So in other words, we all live in our house, and we can have this excuse, well, there's coats that haven't been hung up, and there's clothes all over the bedroom, but we live in our house, you know. But that can actually wear your mood down. I don't know why that is. I mean, we want to be comfortable, but for some reason we are more cheered up when the house is cleaned. And also it balances the brain, it balances your emotions, it balances everything to move things around and to clean things up. And so what she likes to do is clean her house and then stage it. In other words, make it look like something that maybe a realtor is coming in and they're going to take pictures or something like that. She just enjoys it that way. She says, I like to stage my house for my own satisfaction. I wrote that down because that was she made that so clear, and that she said she had to have some enjoyment in housekeeping and homemaking. If you don't have any enjoyment, it just becomes very dry and methodical, and even just, you know, you just feel after a while you're just pushing material things around. And we ladies like to have some heart in things. We like to have some warmth in what we're doing. So she likes to stage it for her own satisfaction. And also, I have heard people say, and I'll just quote this, I long for the days of ladies having friendships, tea gatherings, pretty clothes, and beautiful homes. Do you know, ladies, don't wait for the culture to change. We all have lived through very ugly times in our own era, and I can remember times even in the 50s when things just seemed to be not doing well socially. And so even women at that time were saying, I wish we were back in the olden days, you know. So don't wait for things to change. You have to be part of the change, and you can change it for yourself and create your own history and your own memories. You know, we used to keep these photo albums, and it was kind of a history of our family. It started when we were married, and then the first child was born, and we might have taken a picture of our first car, our first house, and it was a history. You don't want to wait for someone else to provide that culture for you or that history for you. You create your own history. So you create your own happiness at home, and you create your own style, and you put the things around you that make you happy and that cheer you up and that are good and wholesome for you and for your family. And it may take, now as far as friendships, wouldn't it be nice to have ladies over the fence friendships? Well, I can be your lady over the fence for today. But you also had to be careful with that, because there were those ladies over the fence that weren't giving the best advice and that were also quite idle. And although it seems like such a wonderful memory, it's only if you get the right friendship over the fence and people that have the same values as you do. And just because a woman was home in the olden days, now I'm from the 1950s, and I had a Victorian grandmother, and I still think I have a letter that she wrote to me one time. She was born in the 1800s, and even though they were at home a lot, I know a lot of women say, oh, I just long for the days when women were at home and they were friends over the fence. Some of the ones that were home doesn't necessarily mean that they were taught to do their duty at home and to make it the best. There was still always a bit of a divide there, that some women took their responsibilities seriously and were very good with their money and very good with their time, who trained their children, who had lived an upright life and had husbands that were proud of them. And then there were the other type, there always was, that just didn't care. And it could have been their own upbringing or something like that, but you could go see them and there'd be a cup spilled on the floor and some old rag laying on the floor, and a few weeks later you go back and the cup would still be there. There just always were those types. So don't wait for the culture to change. You just have to, let me tell you, the days of ladies having friendships, the days of tea gatherings and nicer styles and clothes and pretty homes, it's there. It's all there. It's always been there. You just have to activate it. You just have to search for it. You just have to find it. And no matter what era you live in, even if it's an era of ugliness in the commercial world, you know, where everything's ugly, all the furniture's ugly, I remember when my friend that got married, it it was an era where there was no pretty china in the china shops. It had all gone very modern and clunky and that sort of thing. And so what she did was she said, instead of joining one of these registries, you know, where you register for all the china at a department store, she said, would you please bring me something that you had when you were younger that you don't want anymore? And so the older people were bringing her things that they had, and because that's what she wanted. Well, later on, then this china starts coming out again. The beauty returns, you know, because basically the ugly things don't help the economy much because people won't buy it. And so if you wait long enough, the beauty does come back. And we have this wonderful thing called the web now where you can find something beautiful. You can find what you want. And for me, I found that Walmart was my perfect store for getting things that made the house look kind of higher end. And I'll show you pictures sometimes. I have a table and chair set. I have a bookshelf. I have bedding. And let's see, what else have I got? I have, just all kinds of things that I've kept that came from Walmart. I've even ordered from Walmart.com for some of the furniture that I needed. And I don't know, people kind of turn their nose up at Walmart, but for country people like us, it's a great place. And you can, like these things that I'm wearing today came from Walmart. And although you can find some pretty bizarre things there too, you can pick and choose what you want that has a classic look or has beauty about it. Yes, I have some beautiful mirrors from Walmart, and I have lamps. Trying to think, what else did I get? I also have pictures on the wall that well framed, you know, with a mat and everything that came from Walmart, and they're coming out with some canvas prints that are very nice. And so Walmart was a great place for me because the price was really decent. And I remember when furniture was like, you had to take out a loan for furniture. It was so high. And now you can go to Walmart and get something if you need any kind of furniture, and it's not going to break your budget even if you're low income. So, and it gives you a chance, if you are low income, you can live with dignity in your home. And I bought fresh flowers there the other day for $4.95, a nice bouquet that I know that's going to last me a month because carnations always last a long time. It can be divided into several bouquets, and that way I have that little extra refinement of having and luxury of having fresh flowers in the home, and I only have to buy them once a month. And that's a great price. So if you will do it now, and you can have that life that you want, you can have that beauty around you, you can have those tea ceremonies, you can have all that. You just have to activate it. You just have to do it and create your own history and create your own culture. And then you can say, when I was younger, I did this, and I've always done this. And don't wait for society to approve of it. For example, I've known ladies who loved a certain era of costume, and so they just made the costumes and just enjoyed wearing them even around the house, because why would you want to wait till things? And now, of course, we can, they're reproducing a lot of the nice things that people admired from the Victorian and the 1950s, and they're reproducing some of those things, and you can get them and enjoy them. So now we want happy people in our home. We want harmony, and we want good conversation that's not dull. And we want to have agreement with, I have a saying here somewhere, if I can find it. I wrote it down here. And that was, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And what that means is, you're in a conversation with someone at home. Now, it could be some of your family, it could be someone that's not in your family, and they say something that is not what you agree with. It's absolutely probably wrong. They got their facts wrong and they said it wrong. You don't jump down their throat. I'm on the conversation part now. I've kind of skipped over from the house to the conversation. So this last little bit is going to be about dealing with people and in conversation. We want happy people in our family. We want them not to feel that they're always being corrected, that they're always being thwarted in their conversation. They're trying to get along and someone's always jumping down their throat. So here's what you do. You can disagree with something without being disagreeable. So while someone may say something that's not accurate, you don't want to jump down their throat and create a conflict and a big argument and get somebody's back up, get somebody's, people will resist you more when you're constantly correcting them. And so the way you can do it is saying, well, that's nice, dear. Did you mean such and such? And, oh, I always thought it was such and such. Well, when I was reading the other day, I thought it meant this. But you don't want to make them feel that they're bad because maybe they were not quite accurate. There are some people that are just sticklers for accuracy. And I told you about this couple we knew that way back in the olden days that they just constantly correct each other, and the man was as bad as the woman. He just constantly, and it could be the teeniest thing, like how many miles exactly something was, or how many minutes it took to get somewhere, or how much something cost, down to the last, penny. And they could never let each other say anything without correcting them and making them be so specific that you could hardly hold a conversation with them because they would correct you too. And what you want to do, if you're tempted to do that, is to try to think what their main point is. What are they actually trying to, let's focus on the main point. What are they trying to say? And not get caught up in these little details of whether or not there were 5 boxes of something instead of 4. That doesn't really matter. The point was that they dropped them all, or something like that. Or, a dozen eggs and they dropped them all, and somebody says, oh, but there was 1 egg I took out the other day and I boiled it and I ate it, so there weren't a dozen. That's silly. That is bad to get your mind going like that. The point is the main point. You know what I'm saying? Mr. S used to always talk about in sermons about people who can't seem to understand something in the Bible because they get caught up in some tiny little detail that throws them off the track of the main point. And it's like a painting, he said, and that is that you stand back, you look, you can see the whole painting, and you see all, the color and everything. But if you get up real close to the painting, you see some tiny little brush strokes, and they don't seem to make sense. They're not even very pretty. And it just isn't very artistic at all. So you get caught up in these little brush strokes, and that's what people do in conversation, and that's why they're so disagreeable, because they're caught up in the brush strokes, and they're not seeing the main idea of the conversation. So what you could do, if you're homeschooling particularly, is you can talk to your children and tell them something, and then ask, what was my main point? What were the side points that supported my main point? I did a lot of this when I was teaching my boys how to make a speech, and we had a book called Speech for Christian Schools or something like that, and we got it down to just a few main things so that they could understand that the point was you have to portray a main idea to someone, but you use the smaller ideas to support that main idea. So you can teach your children not to be disagreeable, not to be always correcting somebody at some little tiny thing. Now, for example, Mr. S is fond of telling me on my birthday or on our anniversary or at Christmas, you go to the store and get something from me. Now, I don't know why some men enjoy doing that. So I'll say, okay, well, I'll get this and that, and I wrap it up, and then I open it up and have a lot of fun being surprised. And then years later, he'll see this lamp or this clock that I bought and be sitting out in the living room, and he'll say, "Where did we get that clock?" And I'll say, "Well, don't you remember you bought it for my anniversary?" And he said, I can't remember. It's just a joke between us. But somebody comes along and says, "Well, you two, you're wrong, and that's not accurate," and it kind of takes all your fun away too. Takes the joy away of having something between you that's a little bit fun. And so try not to be like that. I think it's very disagreeable, and you can disagree without being disagreeable. You can say in your heart, "I am never going to be like that," but you don't need to correct that person. And even when you're raising your children, you need to be very careful not to always jump in on when they're trying to express themselves or tell you something, not to jump over them and correct every little thing, because they can actually forget the main point and just break down, and give up. And their experience with you in conversation is going to be the way that they approach it with other people later on when they're grown up, and it will affect the way that they live with their own husband or wife. So you can be agreeable without being disagreeable. For example, you're standing in a line. I don't know if people stand in lines anymore. We all do everything on the computer, don't we? And standing in line at I would say, grocery store, and someone behind you is mouthing off loudly about something that you very much disagree, that they got their facts wrong and you very much disagree with. You can find something in what they said. If it's required that you say anything, most of the time you can just let it go. If you can ignore it from a stranger and you're standing in line, then you can ignore it around your friends too. You don't have to confront them. Another things I want to say about this is confrontation is always disagreeable. It is never a good idea to confront someone just what you would say cold. It's like cold calling. You confront someone on something and you didn't warn them about it or get their minds prepared for it or anything like that. You confront somebody, it's going to create resistance. It always creates resistance when you confront someone. And that's the same as loudly and hotly disagreeing. You can be very much more refined about it. So this is something you just kind of work on. And I can't advise any sort of book for it except for that Ethel Cotton's conversation course. She had a section in there on how to handle it when there's disagreeable conversation going on. You just learn the art of diplomacy. And we were studying in our ladies' Bible class, which we have on Thursdays. I believe it was 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, and the Apostle Paul said several times, "I would like to encourage you not to be like you were like your old life, but to keep on doing more and more of what you're doing now, of the good things that you're doing now." Now that was very diplomatic, wasn't it? He could have said, "You people are so bad, and you are going back to the way you used to be, and you get back on track." And there are a lot of people who think that because the Bible says in Matthew 18 that if someone offends you, you should go to them, that you should just confront people. But you have to take into account a lot of things that are going to go on around that. You can't just confront someone. It's confrontation and correction and all that has to be done very diplomatically. And the reason for that is you've got to take into account who you are and how if this person reacts very badly and very negatively, how they're going to influence your life later on, or how it's going to affect you when you go back into town and see them again. Are they going to avoid you? Are you going to be seeing them a lot? You can't do that. Some people think that, well, that's how we're supposed to act, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to confront them. That's not. You've got to take into account other things that the scriptures say, such as a soft answer and such as how to show compassion and love to someone. You've got to take all these things into account. Unfortunately, it sometimes takes a lot of years and maturity to do that. But children who grow up in a home where the father and mother have this skill, often develop it themselves, and that's a lovely thing to see when they're younger, that they don't react, that they don't confront, and that they don't argue back, but they still can disagree and hang on to their values even though they don't believe the way that person has expressed their belief. So I hope that didn't sound too confusing to you, but confrontation does not get good results and can make people hostile and can make them resist you, and they're reluctant to have any further association with you. And then there are, you don't have to agree to be agreeable and have a smooth, harmonious conversation. And so don't get the wrong idea about Matthew 18, and be careful who you confront, because you got to see the end result of this, and make sure you're not trying to take authority over people. I know many times people have been very bold in their beliefs and their correction, and I lost my desire to have them over anymore, because you just get tired of it, you know. And you're sitting there serving them your tea, and you prepared your house for them, and then all they do is sit there and correct everything you say till pretty soon you shut down, you know. And then they say, you're not speaking anymore. How come you're not talking? Are you mad at me? You know. And they want that interaction, because that's how they operate. That's how they converse. So it's hard, isn't it, sometimes? But you know, one thing that can give you a great deal of joy, that kind of compensates for any unpleasantness in conversation, is your home. Just make it beautiful, and your the things that you do to create memories for yourself and your family, and the joy that you have, and the traditions that you have. Now, I talked about having tea for ladies, but look, have tea for your own children, and while they're having their tea, you can read to them, or you can talk to them about something, because it's a time they might be a little more quiet. We don't know for sure, but you can have tea with them, and you can also create customs and with them. I remember one time years ago when we were homeschooling, we were studying history, and we were in the colonial time, and I wanted to make costumes for my children, or create some kind of a little historical fashion show. And I think we had something that went from, you know, the colonial time to the current time, and tried to change clothes and kind of have a little fashion show. I had a tea one time where the ladies that were in this fashion show went to every table and explained. They had a little piece of paper that explained the era of the costume while other ladies were drinking tea. It was quite an entertainment. And so there are many other things that we did that made life absolutely wonderful. We had speech days, and we had dinner theater in our own home. Create your own. And then we learned to publish. And that was, we were a family that had no advantages. We had no money, we had no property, but we could read and write. And there became our capital. And so I taught the children to write little books and little stories. And they just took a piece of paper like this and folded it, or maybe made it that size. And they wrote on the pages. They wrote a title. They wrote on the pages. They illustrated it, and they made a story. And the way that I taught them to make a story is to have a theme or a point, and to establish other sentences that carried the theme through, and then have a summarizing statement or an ending to the story. And they wrote books, and then they had a little library, or they had a sale and sell each other these little books or other things that they had made in the home. So we had store at home. I wrote about this in my book, Just Breathing the Air, which is about my life on the homestead with my family when I was growing up. And playing store was one of the big things in our lives. We took catalogs that we had, and we would cut out things to sell. We mount them on cardboard and put a little stand behind them, and put them all on our tables and sell it to each other. And then we made cardboard money, and we bought and sold in those long winter days. We would buy and sell and buy and sell, and then we would line up the chairs and be on a train. And of course, we had these big picture windows that my father had built us. And you can see it snowing like crazy out there and look down at the lake. And the train was going past these windows, apparently. We would sit on the chairs. They weren't going anywhere, but we had an adventure going, and we were on a train. And we would go on a trip. And within a couple of days of this, we were so absorbed, we hardly noticed the cabin fever that our own parents were experiencing. And if you don't understand what cabin fever is, if you're in America today and we're having winter, United States and Canada, you can get cabin fever, and it was very dangerous if you didn't keep your mind active, because being cooped up in one area began to wear on people's minds. And people would do things like just say, oh, I'm not staying here, and just head out in the snow without even putting a coat on because their minds were so far gone. So we tried to prevent cabin fever, and you're still going to have to do that, because even if you are in a place where the heat is unbearable and you're indoors because you're using your air conditioning and you're trying to keep everybody cool, you can get that way. So what we discovered was that they could write. And so they created an industry over writing, and they wrote little newsletters, and they wrote books, and then sometimes they would make a catalog, and in the catalog would sell things that they would make. And we had somebody who made cards with envelopes, and actually sold quite a few of them to friends and relatives. And so these are just some ideas of how to create culture in your own home. So don't wait for the days when ladies were friends over the fence. You can be friends over the fence with your children. You can even write letters to each other at home. And you can write letters to your own, if you're all grown up and your kids are gone, you can still write letters to your friends and to your children and grandchildren. And even if you live in the same place, you can have mailboxes inside your houses and deliver them inside. I've got an old-fashioned mailbox, and the children like to stick letters in that old-fashioned mailbox for me to check. And so you can do so much at the home to revive the kind of culture that you're missing, that you're longing for. And I think some of the things that are easiest to do, the most easiest changes you can make, you might not be able to change anybody's manners, you might not be able to change the location where you live, but some of the easiest things you do is your appearance. You can change your clothes. You can always change your clothes. And you can put on something more inspiring to you, more beautiful. And the other thing is you can do something in your house to change. You can bring in some fresh flowers. Right behind me, you see something called Dusty Miller. It grows prolifically around here. You don't have to replant it. And it's a little bush that I really like, and it has that pretty sage green in it. And you can create beauty all around you. Now, if you are in winter now and there are no flowers outside, you can bring in greenery, and it's just refreshing, and it's free. You can bring in something from outdoors. I'm probably thinking, because I live in the country, that maybe you have that available to you too, maybe not. But you can do things to bring that culture that you desire so much in your home. I long for the days of ladies having friendships, of tea gatherings, of pretty clothes and beautiful homes. You can have all that, and you can do it yourself. And of course, we're living in a wonderful era where we have our phones with our texting and our pictures, and we can. One lady said that she and her mother were always sending each other pictures of before and after, and shiny sinks, and the beautiful flower arrangements back and forth, and that was their group approval. That was their people who were building each other up. And that's, I think, the thing and the secret of being happy, is to always leave people feeling better, to build them up and not to grind them down. And we've talked in the past about conversation that just grinds you down. If you can think of some of those things that irritate you the most about people that are not who tend to send your spirits plummeting after you've been around them, then take note of what they said and determine not to do it yourself. One of the things you can do if you are teaching your own children, or if you're teaching younger women, is take note of the things that irritate you the most and teach other people not to do it. And you can create your own teaching material that way for your children and for others. So ladies, I hope that you have got something done. I've spoken a little bit longer today, and I'm not sure that I want to keep talking this long, but I know that for myself, it takes me about an hour to make a bed and clean up a room or get the kitchen cleaned up. And you would think that with just when my relatives aren't around, if there's just my husband and myself, that there wouldn't be much to do. But we eat at home, and I use a lot of pots and pans and cook things, and I use dishes, and so I always have, meals to clean up after, and it does take me about an hour to do maybe the kitchen and one other room. So that's one of the reasons that I kept talking, and I hope that it has not interfered in your work actually. And I hope that you will leave me a comment, and please join my blog and subscribe, because then you'll see not just the videos but the other things that I do. So ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day, and if you'll leave me a comment, I would really appreciate. My PayPal's on the left if you want to leave a couple of dollars, but only if you can. So ladies, I hope to see you again soon, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you're blessed and that you get a lot done. Thank you and goodbye.